let me say this, the tears, I didn't understand it at the time. I had no idea why I was crying, but it was actually an opening of the heart center. And I didn't think my heart center was closed, but there was an inpouring, I would say, of divine love because of the group I was in. And it opened my heart, and it was just like a dam opened up.
You're listening to the Transcendent Farmer podcast with Emily Reno, created to inspire and empower the next generation of land stewards. Hello. I hope you are doing well. I'm currently recording from Santa Teresa, Costa Rica. So if you hear a bunch of motorcycles, buses, etc., birds in the background, that's because of where I'm at right now. I don't currently have access to recording studio space yet, but working with it. And if you're following along on social media, you are likely to have already seen some snapshots of the farm that I'm working on and helping around with here, the lifeguard gym, in exchange for housing. And wow, what an incredible place. I think you'll be blown away by some of the photos and videos and such. So definitely follow on LinkedIn or, Instagram, Facebook. Those are our other two places where I'm trying to do my best to share, this journey along with all of you. So coming up in May, I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to be likely offering some kind of a workshop related to buying and selling a farm business. And this is something that has occurred to me more recently after some interviews that I've been listening to. And I think too often we focus on starting new and from scratch. And up to this point, I think that has been a lot of my focus, because that's just sort of what people talk about is, biggest barriers to young and beginning farmers, people that want to get into farming. Those are land and capital access. Did you know that 65% of any business owned right now in the UK and the US is owned by a baby boomer? I think that's wild. And the implications of this in terms of possibilities for new farmers is huge. So I want to talk about this more. I'm thinking maybe a panel discussion, community forum, workshop that really talks about this idea of what would it look like to, instead of thinking about, okay, I want to start a farm, I want to purchase property to start my own operation. What if we started focusing our energy on how do you buy a farm business? How do you sell a farm business? And package it in such a way that everyone is benefiting financially from the deal, no matter what happens. So keep an eye out. I'll have more information about that in the very near future. And with that, I would like to provide just a little bit of context for this interview and this episode. At the time that it was recorded, Terry was 80 years old, which means that she's now 82. And it is just crazy, her level of mental acuity. I mean, obviously, by that time you get that age, you just possess so much wisdom. And that really comes across in this conversation. We talk about concepts related to spirituality, such as frequency, taking, responsibility for your thoughts, actions, your words, the boomerang effect, gratitude, and surrender. So if you're curious to think about how your farming endeavors may be connected to something that's much bigger than yourself, I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation with Terry. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Super excited to have you back for another episode of the Transcendent Farmer podcast. And I'm so excited today for my guest, Terry Morse. She is a doctor of natural medicine, doctor of humanitarian services. She is board certified in natural medicine and humanitarian services through the World Organization of Natural Medicine. And she co-founded the Center for Natural Healing, which is the first wellness healing center in Louisiana, and has coached thousands of individuals back to wellness. Morse currently practices in Minnesota and remotely throughout the USA with Solex frequency analysis and advanced healing technologies. She currently offers online healing technology courses to health professionals and community health volunteers. So welcome, Terry. It's so great to have you today.
Well, thank you. This is really, really, really exciting. I love what you're doing, Emily. Thank you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So let's just jump right into this. I think that folks would be really interested in hearing a little bit more about your cultural background and your trajectory into the work that you do in wellness.
Well, thank you. I love how I grew up. I grew up in southeastern Minnesota on an apple orchard. My dad planted apple trees. So, I grew up rooted in the soil, literally, digging in the soil all the time, climbing apple trees, running through the woods, climbing the bluffs right off the Mississippi River there. But it was a very traditional, conservative Minnesota upbringing, meaning I didn't know anything about healing or wellness or anything like that. And so there was a lot of, foods that now I know aren't really that great for me. So by the time I was 25, I started having some issues, health issues in my digestive system. And by the time I was 29, it really manifested quite a bit. And I thought, no, this isn't working for me. Fortunately, I was living in Chicago at the time. I had moved there. And a friend of mine who was more literate than I was said, "Oh, that's your liver." And I didn't even know where my liver was. I said, "What?" So that was the beginning of how I started learning about what it means to be healthy, and learning about body work. I started studying nutrition and body work and became a massage therapist and did all kinds of different things. But it was still not to the degree that it should have been. So 20 years later, approximately, I had another health crisis. Health crises are actually beneficial because they bring you to a new level, which is what I discovered. And so this was back pain. I mean, excruciating. I couldn't walk. I had to quit my job. It was really bad. So this is where the spirituality comes in. Because just when I got to be about 31, I got pretty intense into spirituality, meaning, which I'll share a little bit later, some things that really focused on my own personal divinity. So I was in a group of a couple hundred people, and we were chanting, singing the sacred sound of Hu, H-U, Hu. It's a sacred sound of the universe. It's an ancient name for God, actually. And it's the first two letters of the word human to make it clear, because we are divine. So we're God people. So we were singing Hu, and it was about 20 minutes long. I tell you, I cried through the entire thing. And that night I had more pain than I had ever had. And the next morning it was all gone. It was stunning. This was something I had worked on for several months with as many practitioners as I could come up with and different practices. Nothing was helping. And all of a sudden, overnight, it was gone. And it has never come back. So that was a big change, a big shift for me. And at that point, I was on a whole nother track. So that's probably enough for the beginning, right?
Oh my goodness, that's wild. And I feel like I should have probably started this in the background, but we just, for listeners, I met Terry through a mutual friend and we went to a conference together down in the Twin Cities. And so that's how we got connected, and is very much linked to the story that you were telling. And I think that something that's really powerful to just kind of pull out of that is the importance of somatic experiences, like what you had just described, of the release that comes from crying, is really amazing. And I feel like we don't give enough credit to the power of tears. Like, I think there's a lot of ways that people will sort of associate that with being fragile, or like you're not strong if you're crying, right? Certain level of vulnerability, and that it's not okay. But I have definitely found and had a much healthier relationship with my own tears. I think when people can get to that point where they're like, it's actually totally okay to cry and to let these things out, it's just so much better in the long term. But that's awesome. I think,
let me say this. The tears, I didn't understand it at the time. I had no idea why I was crying, but it was actually an opening of the heart center. And I didn't think my heart center was closed. But there was an inpouring, I would say, of divine love because of the group I was in. And it opened my heart, and it was just like a dam opened up, and that's how it went. And so it was really divine love that made the transformation.
Oh, I love that. So, one of the things that really stood out to me in the description that you had in your LinkedIn profile actually was this idea of being able to support other people to be whole and to live with infinite potential. And I would just love for you to maybe explain what that means for you.
That is such a good question. And you did pick that out because it was kind of buried in there. My perspective, and it's more than a perspective, it's a knowingness. It's something I have experienced. So I speak from what I literally know, not because someone else told me, but because I have realized this within myself. And I'm 80 years old. So I just want to put that out there. I've had a long time to think about, experience life, just gone through a few things. But anyway, I believe that we are whole in our own essence, that we are not only whole, but divine. And there is nothing that needs to be added to us. We are complete. But the process we need to go through to reach that point of realizing our wholeness and our divinity, and it doesn't put down anybody else, it's just that we ourselves are also children of God, is a process of unwinding, removing layers of despair, betrayal, trauma, shock and trauma, deceit, illusion. How many times have we been involved in a project or in a relationship, and all of a sudden it just collapses and it's like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And so we get a lot of trauma in our lives, and we can blame others, but there's no point in blaming anyone, because the point of this unwinding and stripping off the masks and taking the illusions away is for us to become who we really are, which is infinite. And I know that I have the power to manifest anything, depending on, there are lots of variables, but I'm just going to put that out there, because in my essence, I have the divine qualities because I am a child of God, and the divine qualities are omnipresence. I'm everywhere. I can think about my friend in Ghana, West Africa, and I'm there with her. That's a divine quality. And omniscience is complete knowingness. I know. It's just that, can I tap into my knowingness? And so the third one is omnipotence, which is all powerful. I mean, I learned these things when I was a child in the Catholic religion that I grew up in. And I actually became a Catholic nun. I was a nun for 7 years. So this integrated into my consciousness, but I didn't really understand what it meant for me because nobody that was teaching me understood it either. They were attributing this to the divinity itself and not to ourselves. So this unlimited potential that we have is our own selves, but we just have to unwind to the point that we can get there. And that's been my life journey.
Wow. That's so lovely. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to emphasize this idea from some of the experiences that I've even had about this idea of being whole. And there's a really great organization called Midwest Mix that's actually based out of the Twin Cities. And I think it's incredible the work that they are doing. I hope to have maybe one of the founders on in a future episode. But one of the big takeaways that I had from a conference that I attended a while back, and really just for background, right? So this is an organization that is serving people who are biracial, or it could be like a transnational adoptee. So maybe they are originally from a different country, but their parents adopted them from here in the States. And so there's just really interesting cultural dynamics that are showing up in their own family, in their personal identity. And one of the keynote speakers talked about this idea that you are whole, right? And when you get to a point of owning that within yourself and truly believing it, I mean, there's so much power in belief that your world will transform. And I just think that's such an important thing for listeners to be reminded of, is that, yes, you are whole and you don't have to change a thing about who you are, how you show up in the world. Being you is enough. So one of the things that I would love to ask you about is the role that spiritual practice has played in your life.
Oh, well, that's everything. Although it certainly wasn't originally. When I was a kid, I was just a kid and I was just a teenager. And I was kind of wild, and my parents sent me to a girls' boarding school because they were a little concerned about what I was going to do as a teenager. But you grow up eventually. Some people actually get it when they're kids, and I didn't get it. But so spiritual practices, I did go into the convent because I wanted to do the best I could. And I understood that one should always choose the highest. So I did what I thought was the highest. And then I left because I found out it wasn't the highest. The highest was what I could do within myself with my own spiritual practices on a daily basis, actually moment to moment basis. And so the whole point for me is that I have agreed within myself to transform myself. Now, I grant you that I really don't have the ultimate power to do that because I'm a human being that's locked into a lot of past trauma, as I mentioned before. I don't mean exceptional more than anyone else, but we're all damaged goods, basically. And so we have to accept that. There's a lot that's under the surface. So for me, I understood that for me to become whole and to be of the greatest service to mankind, which is our purpose in life, to love and to serve each other, first of all, God and ourselves and each other, to give and receive love. I have understood that is our purpose here. It's a school. Earth is a school where we learn stuff. A lot of people don't realize it's a school, so they keep fighting it, but it's a school. It gives us some hard lessons. But so the role is that on a daily and a moment-to-moment basis, I have learned over time, took time to practice and integrate certain habits, that I integrate constantly, that I am divine, and that I am not only in touch with God, but I accept and surrender to the God beingness within me so that I am not separate from God. And so that is my key point, that when I become the clear channel for the divine essence, which is my work to do, then it does its work, which is its work to do. So it's a moment-to-moment thing for me.
I have a feeling people are curious to know, what does that actually look like? Like, how do you know when you are connecting to something bigger or outside of yourself? How does that shown up for you?
Oh, that's a really good question. It has to do with frequency and rhythm. Now, we all have songs that we like, that turn us on, inspire us. We have people that inspire us. We have foods that uplift us. So we gravitate towards those things. And there's an example of a tuning fork. Well, you got two tuning forks. If you touch one or ring one, the second one will vibrate to that same frequency. And so frequency is what life is all about. Sound is the most powerful thing in all the worlds. And so when you are in tune with the inner sound that is pouring out of you, out of each of us, we feel it. It's just like when you feel music that you want to dance to. I mean, I love to dance. And so when I hear certain music, I dance. That's it. So it's not something anybody has to tell you. And you also know, you can walk into a room and you can feel that there's anger in that room. You can feel that there are people that are out of balance. Or you can feel that, oh man, this is a wonderful place. I am so glad I came to this party. This is working for me. So I know that it is necessary to get beyond the mind. It's not a thinking thing. If the mind will never take you to your heart center, you have to operate from the heart center. And so that was a hard thing for me because when I grew up, my mom was German Irish and my dad was, English, French, Scotch. There wasn't much, if any, affection shown. So the heart center didn't really open up very much when I was a kid. Matter of fact, I think it shut down quite a bit. So I've had to work on that. But when the heart center is open and we are giving and receiving love in honesty and truthfulness and vulnerability, we feel. And when we feel, we know. It's truth. Truth is within us. Does that answer your question, Emily?
Yes, I think it does. And I'm going to add to that. I love what you said about sound and vibration, because I was even thinking about, okay, let's say sound is the most important thing. What about for people who don't have the ability to hear, right? Those who are deaf. They rely on vibration, exactly what you were talking about. I remember I had a really good friend when I was in high school and community college whose brother was deaf, and he would always talk about the way that his brother would just blare the music so that he could feel the vibration of the bass within the vehicle so that he could experience the music too. And I just think that there's something so powerful about that. And I think that for everyone, some of these things that are maybe, I don't know, more ethereal, they show up in different ways, right? So like, for example, some people, and again, this has to do with your ability and openness to see what's going on around you and to pay attention, to be open to, right, the universe sending you messages, whatever that looks like. So I mean, sometimes it can just be, something you overhear in a conversation, when you are in a waiting room, or it's the book that falls open to that certain page and the first line on it has to do with a conversation you had the day before, right? Or something related to like the butterfly that flies across your windshield and you had just had a conversation about the power of nature, or whatever that is, right? These interesting synchronicities and the physical things that show up that are related to conversations, things you're thinking about, intentions that you hold. It's really quite magical. And I love to just kind of get myself to a place where I'm calm enough internally and have enough peace to pay attention to those things. Because it's wild, the stuff that shows up when you really are just present and in the moment.
That is so true. I call that a waking dream because it's something that happens in our waking state, but it transcends the normal physicality. I had an experience of that just the other day. There were 3 deer in my backyard. And it was in the evening, right after dusk, when they come out to eat, and they were eating the bird seed from my bird feeders. And that was a real sign to me because I had just been having a conversation with someone about a business arrangement, and we were questioning certain aspects and wondering which direction to go to. And these 3 deer showed, I can't explain exactly, but I'm going to say that it directly impacted our decision on what to do. It was very interesting, but we were open to it. I mean, we were looking, and all of a sudden I opened the back door and there were those 3 deer. And it's like, okay, that's just what you said. Something just shows up in your life because for me, it's all about we're connected. Everybody and everything in the world is connected, and we don't think we are. We think we're separated, like you're over there and I'm over here. That is so not true. It is like everything I think affects everyone else in the whole world. Now, I know that that's a statement a lot of people cannot accept, but I know it to be true. I know that every single thought, emotion, and action that I take has a ripple effect through all the universes. So I need to take responsibility for my thoughts and my emotions and my words.
Oh my gosh, yes. This idea of like collective consciousness, right? I hear this term all the time in other, podcasts that I listen to. And it is fascinating, right? That we create these, vibrations, the ripple effects. How is it all connected to each other? And I think a lot of what I'm hoping people will take away from, interviews that we have and courses that we offer is just this idea that you don't have to be a victim of your surroundings, that you can, like as you said, take responsibility for the thoughts that you have and how that shapes your external environment. It's really incredible.
But no, isn't this amazing? I love to talk about the boomerang effect, Emily, because what we put out there will come back to us. So if we're having things coming back to us that we don't like, we have to examine, what are we putting out? Or there's an alternative. What are we letting in? Are we allowing ourselves to listen to music that isn't uplifting? Are we allowing people who pull us down to be around us? So it's a real journey to understand who we are spiritually. I mean, we are divine and we have to take responsibility for that eventually. Not everybody's ready for that, and that's okay. People do what they want to do. But at some point, if you want to get to the top of your potential, got to take responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah. What a great conversation, right? I'm so excited to keep sharing these interviews with you and help you think differently about farming, wellness, mental health, and business development in a way that really supports who you are as a person instead of working against what society tells you that you need to do. If you're getting value out of this, one of the ways that you can support our continued production of the podcast is really simple. You can buy us a coffee because it's not just me that's producing this podcast. I actually have a team of people that support me in this work, including our fabulous podcast editor, Alonzo Salas, and our amazing graphic designer, Emma Maddock. All you have to do is visit buymeacoffee.com/MEZCLADA.co, and you can put that $5 that you would have spent on a coffee this week and invest it in a team of people and social enterprise that's working to make more space for the voices and needs of new farmers globally. As a way of saying thank you, we'll be doing a monthly post on social media with a shout out to all of our contributors because we just love you that much. Again, that's buymeacoffee.com/MEZCLADA.co, where you can buy as many cups of coffee or chai, if you're like me, as you would like. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can even become a monthly contributor. You can find all the details online, but I don't want to miss another second of this conversation. So let's get back to the episode. One thing I would love is if you would mind sharing some practical tips with our listeners who maybe are new to developing a spiritual practice of their own. So like for a beginner, where might someone start?
Well, Emily, that is such a good and important question. And it's actually very, very simple. It is not complicated because the heart center is about love. And that's, everybody knows that love is what makes the world go round. But not only that, God is love, and the Christian Bible says anyone who resides in love abides in God and God is in him. So it's important to do everything that we do with love. Now that was a hard thing for me because I'm a very high level mental person and I'm efficient. I like to get things done and I'm about getting the job done, right? And so then I have to back off and say, well, how do I do this with love? What does that feel like? Well, it feels like taking at least 5 minutes a day, and I'll take sometimes 30 or 40 minutes a day, but 5 minutes a day to just stop. Give 5 minutes to our own self, our own divine nature, to God, and just stop and go within. And I focus between the eyebrows, right, that spot right there, about 2 inches back, because there's a gland there called the pineal gland. And that is a very important gland for activating our own spirituality. And so it can become calcified over time if it's not utilized. And so sometimes it takes a little work to just put your attention behind there and just close my eyes. And I sing that ancient love song to God. It's a love song, Hu, H-U. I go, Hu, Hu. And I might just do that for a minute and then be silent and just look inwardly and see if there's anything that shows up, like any sound that might come inwardly or a light that might appear. And it may not. Then I might sing Hu again, but it's about love. And I often imagine my heart as made out of butter, melting in the sun. So if I can imagine and feel like my heart is just softening and melting in the sun, that's how love can come in. So practicing love for a good focused 5 minutes a day, and then trying to maybe go back to that feeling when I'm doing something that's very mental, but I just say, oh, let me remember that my heart is soft and I'm doing this with love. And I can even say inwardly, I'm doing this with all the love in my heart. So that's important. But the second thing is, that's just the first one. The second one is to love ourselves first and not be giving ourselves away. I don't mean not to serve others because that's why we're here, but love ourselves and give ourselves what we need. And that is one of the hardest things for all of us, I think, including myself, because I'm always thinking about other people. But putting myself, what do I need? Just like in the airplane, put your air mask on first, your oxygen mask. But make sure my needs are met. I don't mean to do it, too much. And then the third thing is to do everything the best that I can. When I do something the best I can, it's putting divine love into it, it's focusing, and that will bring me into my core more deeply. It's actually really, really simple. And then the fourth thing is gratitude. Gratitude for every possible thing. I have a little finger. I'm so grateful I have a little finger. I'm so grateful that the water runs on in my faucet today. I'm so grateful I have hot water for a bath. I'm so grateful that the sun shines. Everything. Gratitude opens the heart, because I had to learn how to open my heart. So I had to practice gratitude a lot to open my heart. So those are the things that work for me.
Oh, that's awesome. I love those points, and especially the note of gratitude. That's one of Mezclada's core values, and it definitely comes from so much empirical research that talks about the ripple effect that is created when we lean into that, right? It's sort of the energy goes where, energy, where you're focusing your energy, right? And it's sort of this idea of when you focus on the positive, you create more of that. And even back to the beginning of our conversation, right? Like where we focus our thoughts, how we're controlling those things shapes our external reality and has that ripple effect across other people. So if we're able to appreciate the things that we already have, it attracts even more of that, which I just think is so cool.
I totally agree. And one of the things that I had to learn, again, you can see I've had to learn a lot. I didn't know a thing when I started out, was how to get the benefit from these spiritual practices in my daily life. Like, you can do all this and you can say, okay, now I'm tapping into my spirituality. I feel like I'm more in the flow. I can actually hear some inner sounds, because the inner sounds are flowing from the God source constantly. Can we pick them up? Is our radio attuned to it? So that's where the practices come in, where we attune ourselves just the right way so that we can start hearing the inner sounds and seeing the inner lights, which is God's love. It's the essence of God. It's God's love to us. But the point is, how does that become practical? So I came up with 5 things, 5 words that make it work for me. The first thing, of course, is what I just said, becoming one with spirit. Okay, that was the practice. But then if there's a situation, ask a question. And of course, not just verbally, although that can be effective, especially if it's really volatile question, but writing it down is very, very effective to write it down. But asking a question about the situation, and then making sure my heart is open, because nothing's going to happen if there isn't love, and then listening. In other words, looking for the 3 deer, looking for the page that opens, listening to inner sounds, or listening to a friend of mine from Florida a couple days ago, told me that she just asked a question about what was right for her at that time and closed her eyes for like 10 seconds. And she actually literally heard the words that were the answer to her question. And she didn't expect that. She expected nothing. She says, this isn't going to work for me. It's only 10 seconds. It's not going to work. But it worked instantly, because divine doesn't have any time. And so listening, watching, listening. And then the 4th one is surrendering. In other words, no matter how stressed out I am about a situation, surrendering and knowing that the God force is at work in my life, and it will show me. And then the last one is action. Got to take action. Even if you don't know what you're going to do, if you take action, you'll find out. It'll be this way or that way, and you'll learn. But if you just keep thinking about stuff, it's not going to happen. You got to take action. So that's my 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Wow, I feel like those last 2, that's like the epitome of farming, right? This balance and this marrying of surrender and action. You're putting stuff in the ground, you're harvesting things, and then, okay, it's gonna rain, right? And it's just this, surrendering to Mother Nature and what it's got in store for us. And I think even now, this is something that we talk about so much, is just what is it like to be a farmer today with climate change and this just erratic nature of our weather patterns and unpredictability to an even more extreme degree than it might have been in the past. And I think that the healthier relationship people can develop between that surrender and action piece Wow. I think the better off they're going to be just in the long term.
That is so true. You know, life is actually easy and simple, but our mind makes it complicated, and the mind will always betray us. So if we want the truth, we just have to go to the heart center and do everything with love and trust the divine, because we are the divine. I mean, I don't mean we're God, I don't mean that. But the essence of God is what we are. That's our core. That's who we are. We have this body. It's like an overcoat, you know, we're going to get rid of it one day. But our essence pertains. We are eternal. We know that. We are eternal. So I just love it. You know, I wanted to share this. There's actually an app on my phone. Anybody can get it. It's free. It's a Hue app. So if anybody wants to practice that Hue song, love song to God, you just put HU into your Play Store in the App Store. And there's like 5 or 6 different ones, but you pick the one that's gold and blue and gold. And there's another long word that goes along with it. They'll help you pick it. So I don't know if people are going to remember it, but it starts with ECK. ECK is an ancient name for the Holy Spirit. So that app is so wonderful because part of that app is a 4-minute video that shows nature and how nature flows with the inner divine sound. And it's just beautiful. I mean, I think everybody would enjoy that.
Awesome. That's great. And we'll definitely be sure to include a link to that if we can in the show notes so that people can follow up on that. So, okay, what is something exciting that you're working on right now, Terry, that you want listeners to know more about? Because you're doing a lot of cool things.
I am, but I'm really excited about this because it's brand new and it isn't even off the ground yet. We're going to launch it in January probably. And there are 4 of us that are putting this together. It's called CCN, and it stands for Community Connection Network, CCN. And what is it? Well, we're structuring it as we speak. It's going to be an opportunity. It's going to be people getting together. What it's going to look like is people getting together and sharing their passions. You know how people have business networking groups? They talk about business. It's like that, but it has nothing to do with business. It has to do with, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is my passion. I haven't been able to follow my passion, but I want to, or I am following my passion and I love it, or whatever. My dreams, my aspirations, my skills, people getting to know each other, connecting in a community, because it's going to have to be local, because people are not going to drive 2 hours for something like this, where you get together for an hour and a half or whatever, might have some snacks or something, and just in a circle, share who we are. And here's the point of it. The point of it is that how many of us can say that we are totally empowered, that we have empowered ourselves, that we stand on who we are and we know who we are and we're proud of who we are. There's often, let's just say, in most of us, a little corner that says, I'm not worthy. I don't know that I'm good enough. You know, I don't get what I need. I'm not happy or whatever. And so this is an opportunity for people to come together to really empower each other by empowering ourselves, because we become who we are when we speak about who we are in a safe environment. It's going to be very, very safe. So we're going to start these chapters all over the country and maybe all over the world. CCN, Community Connection Network. I'm excited about it. And we're going to have a website.
Oh, good. Yes, I was going to say, well, how can people find out about it? So once the website link is live, we'll definitely throw that in the notes as well. That's awesome.
Cool.
Yes. Okay. So you are on the Transcendent Farmer podcast, which means that I have to ask the question, what does a transcendent farmer look like to you? What does that mean to you?
Well, that's a good question, because I have not actually looked at your perspective on it very much, but I have a lot of farmer friends. I mean, real farmers, that's their livelihood, you know, but not the great big ones. Like you mentioned, it's the smaller farms, a few hundred acres or 1,000 or a couple thousand acres, you know, not 20. And a lot of my friends are deeply spiritual. And, you know, they do the commercial farming because that's what they've learned, but they want to change. They want to move in other directions. And they do gardening. They always do gardening so they can put their hands in the soil. because I have experience when I put my hands in the soil, and I love weeding. I just love weeding because I know that when I'm pulling a weed out, that it's just a good plant that's in the wrong place, right? But when I'm pulling it out, I'm actually taking something out of my psyche that shouldn't be there. I'm actually healing myself when I'm weeding. So I think a transcendent farmer is someone who's in touch with nature, in touch with themselves, and working with themselves by being integrated into nature. And the laws of nature are incontrovertible. I'm a doctor of natural medicine, and I'm always telling people, if you are not following the laws of nature, you cannot be well. If you get sick, you have to do what your dog does. You have to stop eating. If you don't stop eating when you're sick, you're going to keep getting sick. Dogs, no animal will eat when they're sick. They'll just stop eating. So I've stopped eating for a week or so at a time if I was really sick. And it works, I'm telling you. But a transcendent farmer, that's somebody who knows how nature works.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. And I think that people will be really interested to follow up and learn more about some of what you're doing. So where would you direct people if they wanted to learn more and follow some of the work that you're up to?
Well, thank you very much. I actually don't have my website up yet. It was supposed to be up earlier this year, and I just got sidetracked with a lot of things, including a lot of people. So, I have a few documents I can send to people if they want information on how I work and what I do. I just don't have my website up yet.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to include that in the show notes as well. So for anybody who wants to follow up, please do so. I'm sure Terry would welcome having you reach out and just chat with her a little bit. But I just want to thank you so much, Terry, for your time. This was such a lovely conversation. And I hope people feel inspired by some of the nuggets of wisdom that you have shared with us today. I'm hopeful that they'll, have this be a part of their journey and wherever they're at and take that with them with it where they go. And yeah, just hoping that everyone out there is taking a lot, jotting notes down, and feel free to come back to this anytime when you want a refresher on some of these ideas. Make sure to check out the app that she mentioned. We'll have those in the show notes, and we'll just keep doing what we do.
Emily, thank you for letting me speak with you and share. It's just wonderful when we can reach out to a wider audience and we can all become part of a greater community. So I really appreciate this opportunity, Emily. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody, and we'll be back soon with another episode. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Transcendent Farmer Podcast. If you love this conversation as much as we did, feel free to share the love by passing it along to a friend or fellow farmer, and be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss another episode. Until next time, friends.